Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I'm absolutely loving it. Honestly, I'm gleeful. Because just as expected, just as we saw during Donald Trump's first term in office, the mainstream media is painting this doom and gloom picture, and I'm just sitting here saying, yeah, I don't think that's the way that it's gonna play out. And I'm following my gut on these predictions. And you know what? It's a nice feeling to be right, at least for the time being. They told us that Donald Trump's tariff policy was going to have an immediate negative impact. It was going to decimate American industry and the jobs market. And then guess what? We get the April 2025 jobs report, and it's an absolute above expectations banger. In other words, the April 2025 jobs report just blew a hole straight through the Democrat narrative. Everything they told you would happen under Trump's leadership, it seems the opposite is playing out. It's exactly like his first term, right? He's gonna start World War III. Then he became the first president in modern history not to start a new war, not to mention the peace agreements. And of course, the same thing with the economy. He was gonna crash the economy. But we all remember the Trump economy, despite them trying to reframe the conversation by using COVID numbers to skew his track record. And well, now it seems it's the exact same thing. They're telling us it's the end of the world, but it seems like Donald Trump is going to keep another promise. He might actually usher in the golden age of America. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so boom, the April 2025 jobs report just dropped, and yeah.
177,000 jobs were added in the month of April. The unemployment rate stayed low. It stayed at 4.2%. When we look at where the jobs are right now, we're seeing solid gains in a number of places. Combination in food services, right? Restaurants, hotels, hospitals, healthcare, private education, all of them adding jobs.
Jobs report for April hitting the wires. Non-farm payrolls greater 177,000. We're expecting, as Joe pointed out, 133,000. 177,000 would be the second best of the year outside of what's in the rearview mirror.
436,000 increase in the number of people who are employed. So this is an amazing report. The labor force participation rate rose 2 weeks ago. Every headline, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, was, oh, the stock market is crashing. And since then, the market has been up, like 2,800 points.
Donald Trump's first jobs report crushes expectations. They told us tariffs were going to be a nightmare, especially for jobs. Donald Trump's not bringing back any jobs. Manufacturing is going to flee. Not exactly sure how they came to that conclusion, but that's basically what they told us. Well, leftists, I guess, tell that to the 177,000 Americans who just got hired in April alone. Absolutely crushing expectations, and here's the key. Here's the most important part of the story. These are real jobs in the real economy, not Joe Biden's fake jobs that came from bloated government spending, plunging the country further and further into debt to make it seem as if he was the greatest jobs president of all time. No, these are private sector jobs. You know, actual businesses providing actual value, being actually productive, producing things. Yeah, these are real jobs that will add to the country's GDP. Trump is getting people back to work, and also it seems as though he's achieving reshoring jobs, you know? You got all these big economists and big major investors, big names in the game, and I keep hearing the same thing. Jobs aren't coming back. It's never gonna happen. But contrary to what they're saying, it seems like it is happening. Now again, do I think that Donald Trump is gonna bring back every industry and turn America into a manufacturing powerhouse? No, I don't think so, and I don't even necessarily think that's what you'd want. We want to see an increase in manufacturing, but not to completely reframe the American economy as a manufacturing powerhouse. That's not the strength of the American economy. You know, the idea is not to bring sweatshops to America, but to bring good, high-paying jobs in industries where it makes sense. And that seems to be happening. Since Donald Trump's inauguration day, we've seen nearly $5 trillion in new investment deals secured under the Trump administration. Now, I've been saying over $1 trillion over the next 5 to 10 years because I didn't calculate the whole number. I just knew that it was over $1 trillion. But now, after digging a little bit and reading some headlines, the total in terms of money coming back and investing in American manufacturing and American jobs is over $5 trillion. And that's projected to create over 450,000 new jobs in the coming quarters. It seems like we're getting announcements almost every single day. Just yesterday, Kimberly-Clark just announced a $2 billion investment to expand U.S. manufacturing. Pratt Industries is pumping $5 billion in a new facility, creating 5,000 new good-paying American jobs. And so while the big hedge fund managers and economists said, no, it's never going to happen, It's happening. And this is money that's coming in, giving brand new opportunity to American workers. And that's a key point here. American workers. Because let's also talk about immigration. When we break down the jobs report in April alone, according to AIinvest.com, over 100,000 native-born Americans joined the labor force, while 41,000 foreign-born workers exited. You don't need a PhD in economics to see what's happening here. Trump is putting American citizens first, and it clearly seems to be working. You know, for years under Joe Biden, American workers were getting pushed out of the labor market as low-skilled labor was illegally entering the nation, not to mention the increase in high-skilled labor being legally funneled into the country, which created more talent supply, pushing wages down and opportunities down for American citizens to get good jobs. Well, under the first few months of Donald Trump's administration, we're finally seeing a reversal of that trend. The job market's healing, wages are stabilizing, and the American citizen is finally being prioritized again. And earlier I was mentioning Joe Biden's record on jobs, or lack thereof. Well, this chart over here ought to put it into clear perspective. Take a look at the last 2 years of Joe Biden's administration. The green bars represent an increase in U.S. federal employees. Joe Biden's job record was essentially increasing the size of bureaucracy. Well, speaking of reversal, the moment Donald Trump takes over, look at those big, beautiful red chunks. Donald Trump is putting the nation back to work, not by taking money out of productive people's pockets to create fake government desk jockey jobs, but by getting people back to work in a flourishing private sector. And that right there is how a real economy grows, not by hiring 24-year-olds to be onboarded as DEI experts and fill out gender equity reports for the Department of Education, but by incentivizing actual private sector investment in the country, creating good jobs for real companies that provide services or create actual products. This is a recovering economy. And it's not to say that there might not be speed bumps in the future, but the signs are absolutely clear. This is what happens when you start building an actual economic foundation. And it's a far cry from what we saw under Joe Biden. He gave you supply chain collapses, runaway inflation, cheap imported labor, economic gaslighting on a global scale. His growth came from taxpayer-funded subsidies, not private capital. His jobs were mostly government padding. And now Trump's coming in and cleaning house and doing the exact opposite, and it's going to create an economic boom. I'm telling you, despite the tariff fear-mongering, despite all the naysaying, this right here, this is the kind of thing that creates real growth. And now obviously the media won't give him credit. They're already trying to get ahead of this thing.
The April jobs report was released just moments ago. It showed the United States added 177,000 jobs last month, which topped economists' expectations. The unemployment rate was unchanged at 4.2%. So, Peter Baker, we know this White House has been looking for any sign of good economic news in recent weeks. We are now a month since their self-proclaimed Liberation Day, which started the tariffs and trade wars. And there's certainly most of the economic signals have been worrisome, to say the least. This one, a little better.
No, absolutely. This is something they can point to. Of course, all this is the same roughly kind of job growth we saw under Biden, which they said was terrible and ruinous and disastrous. So, you know, they're going to spin it. They'll talk about how great it is. It doesn't necessarily tell us where things will go in a month or 2 months if these tariffs really do go into effect. And it's also interesting, you know, we don't know yet the full impact of all of these layoffs or attempts to lay off these thousands and thousands of federal government workers, the spin-off effects that's going to have on the economy in different parts of the country, particularly even red states where there are actually government workers who are affected.
This would have been a failure if it was one of Joe Biden's reports. But again, Joe Biden was stat padding. Not to mention, even with the fake jobs reports that they were releasing, month after month we saw revisions to nearly every single Joe Biden jobs report. As you can see on screen here, the little red bars are the revisions, which showed us that the numbers that Joe Biden was leading with month after month weren't even accurate. So Joe Biden's numbers weren't as good as they were claiming, and they were padded by government spending. They weren't actual productive jobs. So despite what they say, this is what winning looks like. Even in the midst of supposedly the American economic collapse due to tariffs, investment is pouring in, jobs are being created, and that means more money circulating in the American economy. It means more growth, more jobs for Americans, and I'm telling you, considering trillions of dollars is pouring in, this is just the very beginning. Anyways, continued left-wing narrative collapse and Donald Trump proving all the naysayers wrong. Once again, it's just like his first term. That's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.